Hey all, Mark Slane with the United States Krav Maga Association. Today talking about realistic attacks. You know, one thing we strive in Krav when we do training is to have, realistic attackers, what we call realistic attackers. Someone truly coming at us with force and flailing away, and we don't want to, for instance, do handgun defenses against a statue standing there holding a handgun. We want that handgun waving, we want that person being belligerent and smacking us, pushing us, blitzing in. So, to us, everything we do, we try to think realistic attacks. And I believe Sergeant Rory Miller, in his book Facing Violence, talked about how most arts are getting people ready for, one or two types of violence. They got to hope that the violence that finds them is what they've trained for. If I'm a ground guy, I'm a grappler, and that's what I've trained for, that's what I think's going to find me. I'm okay if it's a one-on-one barroom fight, but, if it's three guys attacking me in a bus aisle, yeah, that doesn't work out quite so well. So, we want to, I guess we rack our brains thinking about, what can go down, what can happen, where could we be? Let's practice things from laying down, from being in a seat, from not being able to get out of a car. Realistic attacks. But then, sometimes we call things realistic attacks, and we, that would be a real, but something to think about. When we think of knife attacks, generally if we say a realistic attack, it's somebody that's blitzing us, it's somebody that's hockey punching with that knife, it's a shank. And even I'm guilty of this. We used to say, the martial arts, their knife defense has to come from 8 foot away, you see it coming. That's not realistic. Well, unless you study this, and it really, the statistics bear this out, the most common knife attack in the United States is during a domestic dispute. Either he or she grabs a knife from the kitchen and comes from 7 or 8 foot away to stab their spouse because they're pissed. So, how can we say that's not a realistic knife attack if it does indeed happen? Now, to us, we also have to have answers for if it is a shank, if it is something in close, but we can't dismiss from a distance offhand just because, that's not a realistic attack. Again, Rory Miller, in that same book, he talks about he's been stabbed. Someone's tried to stab him. It was either 4 or 5 times. And he said none of the 4 or 5 attempted stabbings were what he would consider a realistic knife attack. And he goes on to say, but if he wouldn't have done something about them, they would have stabbed him, and that would have felt pretty real. So, we've got to avoid thinking that, this is a realistic attack, this isn't. There's several organizations that are plucking choke defense. They're taking the pluck out because, in their head, a realistic choke, someone comes up with force, they hit you, you're being pushed backwards, you're going to hit a wall, you're going to fall on the ground, and that could well be. But then when you talk to law enforcement, 90% of the chokings they see are, again, domestic disputes where there isn't force. He's grabbed her throat and he's holding her there so they can look at each other eye to eye and she can know that he's pissed. There is no force. They are actually just standing there and choking. And yet we call that, that's not realistic. That's not a realistic attack. And yet that's probably the vast majority of the chokings in the United States, again, domestic disputes. So, in class I catch we got level 1 people. They've never, attacked anybody in their life. Good for them. But we'll be doing headlock defense, where we wrap around their neck, we step in front of them, we pull them around, and then I'll have students kind of wrap their neck but not step around. And I look at this like, that's so bizarre. That's not a realistic headlock. But if that person were to put somebody in a headlock, that's how they would do it. That's how they just proved to me that they were going to do it in class. So, it's not like scumbags are trained. Scumbags can certainly, do some bizarre types of attacks, do a headlock wrong, do something on the ground, wrong. That's not realistic. But if they're doing it and it's happening to us, I would have to say, yeah, that is a realistic attack. It's going to do damage if I don't do something to defend it. So I guess the point is, in our trainings, don't get caught in what we think a realistic attack is. Again, in class I catch ourselves, this guy's squared up, he's 5 foot away, he's just dancing, that's not realistic. A real criminal would come in and blitz you. Well, yeah, but you could certainly also find a guy that's going to stand 5 foot away and dance around and, threaten you. So we can't get stuck in what we think realistic attacks are. And in class, I've tried over the years to make sure that I don't tell someone, that's not a realistic attack. They wouldn't headlock that way. They wouldn't do this that way. Because evidently it could happen that way. We make fun of the Jim Carrey knife video, if you've ever seen it, where he gets stabbed and he tells the student, unlike many beginners, you attacked me wrong. Let people do goofy attacks in class. see if your same defense from a good attack still works for it. See if there's anything you would do differently. This is a learning experience rather than, always worrying about having a realistic attack. Mark Slane, United States Krav Maga Association.